In the year 1993, a murder unfolded along 4.5 Alley in Huntington.
25-year-old Melissa McClure, known on the street as Lisa Estep, convicted 3 times for prostitution, murdered. Shot at least once in the body and possibly beaten or shot in the head.
A single gunshot shattered the relative quiet of a spring night in Huntington, West Virginia. A shadowy figure dissolved into the darkness surrounding the alley. Police arrived to find a young woman brutally beaten with a single gunshot wound, barely clinging to life. The sensational case garnered much interest in the area for a time, but grew cold as leads dried up over the years. 30 years later, and several counties away, the mystery of the murder would come to light during the investigation of an unrelated crime. Who was responsible for murdering a young woman trying to build a new life for herself? Was she simply in the wrong place at the wrong time? Or did she know her killer? Welcome back to Mysterious 7. Today we're looking into the 30-year-old cold case of Melissa Martinez that was finally solved in 2022. If you haven't subscribed already, please consider subscribing, hit the like button, and click on the notification bell to get the latest content. Without any further ado, let's dive right into this mystery. Huntington, West Virginia sits at the western foothills of the Appalachian Mountains, providing a scenic landscape to visitors and residents alike. It's home to Marshall University, a public research university known for their football team, the Thundering Herd. It's located along the Ohio River and the mouth of the Wyandotte River, making it the second busiest inland port in the United States. The blend of colonial architecture and modern institutions provides an even blend of old town charm and modern living. It's in this town that 25-year-old Melissa Ann Martinez was hoping to build herself a new life. Melissa was presumed to have been born in either 1968 or 1969. Her mother lived in Las Vegas, Nevada. She had 3 siblings, 2 brothers and a sister who lived in the Huntington area, along with a niece. Melissa lived with a friend, Marie Sadler, in the 4600 block of Darnell Road in Huntington. Sadler said she'd started going to church and had a promising future ahead of her. According to a former assistant chaplain at Cabell County Jail, John Person, Melissa had rededicated her life to Christ just 2 months before her death. She'd confessed this to him while being detained for unknown charges. It's alleged that Melissa was a sex worker and had some minor run-ins with the law. There are no records that point to why she had turned to this occupation. It can only be assumed that Melissa had fallen on hard times and needed to find a means of supporting herself. She changed her name to Lisa Ann Estep. Her past forgotten, her new friends in Huntington became her family. Presumably, it was this line of work that ultimately led to her death down a darkened alley. In the early morning hours of March 16, 1993, witnesses reported a man beating a woman in an alley in the 1400 block between 4th and 5th Avenue in Huntington. After a single gunshot rang out, police were called to investigate the incident. There, police discovered a young woman desperately clinging to life on the sidewalk of the alley. She suffered multiple lacerations to her head and face and a single gunshot wound to her torso. Working against time, medical personnel rushed her to Cabell County Hospital. Unfortunately, their efforts were in vain as Melissa succumbed to her injuries shortly after arriving. An autopsy report provided by the medical examiner's office in South Charleston confirmed that Melissa was shot once in the chest and beaten about the head and face with a blunt object. Wasting no time, police canvassed the area and began looking for answers among the witnesses to the crime. A couple who lived in the area and knew Melissa said the shot rang out like a cannon and woke them from their sleep. Dozens of interviews were carried out, and police at the time did have a potential prime suspect. Witness statements pointed investigators towards Ricky Louie Woody. The 30-year-old man was interviewed by police. No clear link was found that could establish a connection between Woody and Melissa. No known relationship existed between the two. The lack of sufficient evidence did not allow for police to formally charge the man. He was released, but remained a person of interest. Meanwhile, the investigation dragged on. The hype created by the media in regard to the occupation of the victim followed investigators at every turn. The lack of progress in the case led many to believe that perhaps the police just weren't doing enough to solve the murder. In a 1993 interview with newspapers, Huntington Police Department Detective Carl Brooks said that the case was dependent on leads. Where we go from here depends on where the leads take us. Police at the time continued to investigate the murder of Lisa Ann Estep. They were unaware at that time that this was an alias. Only after a thorough investigation did investigators discover her legal name was actually Melissa Martinez. Upon discovering the true identity of the victim, police made contact with her family. Melissa's family requested anonymity for fear of being publicly shamed due to her occupation. In an anonymous interview with local newspaper The Herald Dispatch in 1993, one of her brothers said that they were never quite sure as to why Melissa chose to do sex work. He described it as her lifestyle. Although the family wished to remain anonymous, he expressed that he still loved his sister and voiced fears the police would let the investigation drop once the sensationalism surrounding the crime died down. I've already prepared my mother in Las Vegas for the fact that the people who murdered Lisa may never be found, he told the newspaper. After all, most people think she was trash. I hope the police don't think that, he said. The murder of Melissa created a stir. It was a sensational story centering around the murder of an alleged sex worker. News coverage angled their focus on the fact that Melissa was a sex worker rather than looking at the brutal murder of a young woman. For her friends, Melissa was being forgotten as a person and being made into a spectacle to up ratings. While her family shied away from media attention and scrutiny, her friends in Huntington mourned her passing publicly. An attempt was made to raise funds in order to put up a memorial for Melissa. Those closest to her reached out to the kindness of the community. Local papers carried articles surrounding the fundraising initiatives made by Melissa's concerned network of close friends. In honor of Melissa, they wanted to erect a gray granite memorial stone. This, however, never happened. A week later, a cross was nailed onto a utility pole adjacent to where her body was found in the alley. Inscribed on it were the words, "Don't let Lisa die in vain." Melissa's friend Ron Tillman remarked, "Lisa was like a family member to us. No one has anything to remember her by. We want to try and give her some dignity," he said. Lynn Ray and her husband Ed Luna, who lived in the alley where Melissa was murdered, said Melissa was a friend who did not deserve to be killed, no matter her lifestyle. She was sweet and kind of quiet. The only time I remember her working out here was before rent time. The makeshift memorial cross urged for action to be taken in Melissa's case. It was eventually removed, though, shortly after being put up. 7 days after her death, former jail chaplain John Person allegedly complained to newspapers that Melissa was not given a proper funeral despite surrendering her life to Christ once again. He fervently hoped the memory of a woman he called a sweet lady would not be swept under the rug. 8 days after her death, an unidentified spokesperson for Melissa's family said that they'd have her body cremated and sent to her mother in Las Vegas. The delay in making the arrangements was caused by the fact that the family had to prove Melissa was legally divorced so that they could assume responsibility for her remains to be released. As with many cold cases, leads went nowhere, and despite her friends trying to keep her memory alive, the case was soon shelved and her killer remained a mystery. The years flew by, but then, almost 3 decades later, interest was reignited in the long-forgotten case. In December 2020, an arrest was made in Billings, Montana that would lead investigators back to the events of March 16, 1993. A light was finally shone on the case of Melissa Martinez. A then 59-year-old Ricky Louis Woody was arrested following an unrelated charge in Big Sky Country. After leaving Huntington just a year after Melissa's murder, the long arm of justice eventually caught up to Woody. Woody was arrested following a domestic violence charge in December 2020. The woman who laid the charges alleged that he beat her with a bat, shoved her, broke her phone, and threatened to kill her. While incarcerated for the domestic violence charge, Woody allegedly asked people to tell the woman to recant her statements. Investigators in Billings began questioning Woody regarding the current case he was involved in when they stumbled across a bigger mystery. Woody gave police a statement about a murder that occurred in Huntington in the early 1990s. Initially, he claimed that he knew the person responsible for the murder of a woman named Lisa in Huntington. Upon further questioning, Woody provided what details he could recall. Ultimately, he admitted to being a participant in the murder. In May 2021, Billings police officers contacted the Huntington Police Department with regard to any possible cold cases they had that involved a woman named Lisa. One did pop up, the case of Melissa Martinez. Huntington police reviewed the cold case and found the links that for so long eluded them. Woody was the only possible suspect in the case during the initial investigation. Without the evidence they needed back then, they had no option but to let him go. Investigators from Huntington made the trip to Montana and re-interviewed Woody in September 2021, where he was being held at the Yellowstone County Detention Facility for the domestic violence matter he'd been arrested for. Satisfied with the evidence, they returned to West Virginia with the confession they needed to link Woody to the murder of Melissa. There have always been signs that he was a primary suspect, but getting to this point, you really needed that information, and we finally received it, said Huntington Police Chief Carl Colder. The confession from Woody allowed Huntington Police to take the evidence they finally had to secure an indictment in the case of Melissa Martinez. In September 2022, Ricky Louis Woody was indicted by a grand jury in Cabell County. He was officially charged in October 2022. Woody has been charged with unlawfully, feloniously, willfully, maliciously, and deliberately slaying and murdering Melissa Martinez, who went by the name Lisa Ann Estep, in Huntington on the 16th of March, 1993. A spokesperson for the Cabell County Circuit County Judge Paul Farrell's office said that Woody still needed to face justice for the charges that led to his initial arrest back in Montana. Only then can he be extradited to West Virginia to answer for the murder of Melissa. He's currently being held in Montana on several felony charges, including being a fugitive from justice and assault with a weapon. His bond was set at $50,000. He's waived extradition to West Virginia, but will only be transferred once legal matters have been tied up in Montana. Philip W. Morrison, executive director of the West Virginia Prosecuting Attorneys Institute, was assigned as a special prosecutor for the case. He explained the scarcity of information boiled down to the case still being investigated and cited ethical rules about pretrial publicity, which he had to honor. A court appearance has been slated but not confirmed for November 2022, after which officials believe he'll return to West Virginia to face murder charges for the death of Melissa Martinez. At the time, Morrison did not know exactly when Woody would be extradited, only that they're not quite done with him out there, he said. Having worked with cold cases before and seen a few go to trial, the setbacks can be numerous, as memories typically fade over time, witnesses become unavailable, or evidence gets lost along the way. There is hope, though, as Morrison found that the cases he's worked, they often do get an evidentiary break that helps push the case in their favor. Following the arrest of Woody, Huntington Police Chief Carl Colder said that Melissa's family were informed of the breakthrough. He hoped that it gave them some sense of closure. He commended the hard work done by police that went into solving the case. Colder thanked both the Billings Police Department and Huntington Police Department for their ability to work together in seeing the case to its end. We want the public to know that we're not going to just shut down the case. We're going to continue to seek leads and investigations. That's what we did here, he said. Colder further added that families still awaiting answers in unrelated cold cases should not give up. The solving of Melissa's case should provide hope that justice will prevail and that it should give them the drive to keep going. It gives them hope that we're going to continue our efforts to investigate. We're going to also be vigilant in bringing those to justice who deserve to be brought to justice, said Colder. The cases for which Woody's been charged remain ongoing in both Montana and West Virginia. The solving of Melissa's case gives hope to many families who have suffered similar fates. It proves that no matter how long it's been, the answers to unsolved murders will be found, even in the most difficult of circumstances. Once again, dedication to the job and teamwork has proved that no stone will be left unturned in seeking the truth to unsolved crimes. What are your views on the solving of cold cases? Do you believe justice will eventually be served upon the one responsible for the crime sooner or later? Perhaps you or someone you know awaits the answers to a mystery that's plagued them for years. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And please subscribe to our channel. Until we meet again, stay safe and keep watching Mysterious 7.